If you have not taken your identity out of your job title, you will struggle a lot in different phases and stages of your life. I went from being heads of account in my country to being trainee when I eventually got the job. In a subtle way, kind of feel that's how some African countries are a little bit behind in terms of skills and qualification. People would literally just get a job because they have the qualification, but do they know how to do the job? That was one of the mindset that I had to consciously come out from, to say, right, I do have the qualification, but is there anything on my CV currently that evidences that I can actually do the job? You ever found yourself in a position where you moved countries and it feels like all of your professional experience in whatever field that you were doing, no matter how technical it was, it no longer mean anything? You're probably mostly underqualified or overqualified for some roles, and you get told, oh, you do have some experience, but you don't have the UK experience, you don't have the US experience, we're practically looking for some Canadian experience. That happens a lot, and that was me 5 years ago. I moved to the UK as a student on a student visa, and I was looking to work. You know how people just tell you, just go to the UK, everything's going to be all right. You go there, you work, there's a job waiting for you. That was the dream that was sold to a lot of us. So I moved here, and I wasn't really agitated about applying for jobs in the first few months of me moving here. So I was studying, taking everything at an easy pace. And then I start to reach the time when I need to graduate, when I need to finish my dissertation. I'm applying and I'm getting things like, right, you do have some good experience, but we kind of wanted like some UK experience, we want some specific UK experience. And I'm thinking, where am I going to get the UK experience if I don't get a chance to actually work and do that experience? And mind you, because you're on a student visa, your visa is definitely ticking. You need to get in another visa, or you need to get in the work visa. Thankfully, the government had the post-study work visa, which I went on. But several months of application, I kept getting the same thing. Now, why am I making this video really? I just wanted to share with you 4 things you should know when you move to a new country. Because beyond the excitement, beyond the euphoria of you being in the new country, there are things that you actually need to know to set you ahead. The first one is, don't marry your previous job title. What do I mean by that? I moved from being heads of account in my home country and nearly done with my accounting qualification to being chartered accountant. I moved from that to being a trainee, and I eventually got the job. And initially that felt like failure. I remember several months of applying, and I felt like I want to apply for roles that are within my level, within the things that I've done before. You will resonate with me that sometimes you might have been a medical doctor, you might have been like up there in your field, and you come here and sometimes you have to take a job that feels not out of pride, but feels somewhat lower than what you had been doing or what you had been used to. So I think it's that flexibility of knowing when to adjust, when to adapt, when to switch. Once I finished my university, I took a 3-month internship that I had to pay for. I know normally you do an internship and you expect that you get paid, but I had to pay for that experience because I kept hearing the same thing. You don't have UK experience, we're so sorry. If you could just get some UK experience, I don't know. So I did that and got about 3 to 5 months of UK experience. And I kid you not when I say that my interviews doubled. So you have to, if you know the right thing to do, you know the right moves to make, then you probably would not struggle as much when you move to a new country. But if you don't have information, you're applying to the same thing. It was like, why are the doors shut, or why are things not working the way you expect? So that was one thing I did. It was the time I applied to the role, and the recruiter told me, right, I've just contacted the client and they feel like you might be a bit too senior for that role. I thought, oh, that's a new one. I've been getting, you're not qualified for the role, sorry, you don't have UK experience. But when they looked at my accounting experience from back home, they said, we feel you're a bit too senior for this role, you might get bored in the role and then leave. And I'm saying, no, I would leave, just give me a chance. But that's not how it worked. So I didn't get that job at the end of the day. So these are things that actually happen to immigrants as well when you move. The other thing is to learn the country's hiring system. The dynamics of recruitment is different here than it used to be, or than it is in your home country. So you'll be inefficient if you're trying to put the same process of hiring here. Now, one of my observations from years of being here and then working in the corporate space is that before breaking in, I thought it was all about qualifications. Yes, I have my chartered accountancy, I have my master's, I have a BSc, I've got first class, I've got all of that. And I'm thinking, once I drop my qualification, boom, they're going to like take the job. But it's not. In a subtle way, kind of feel that's how African countries are a little bit behind in terms of skills and qualification. People would literally just get a job because they have the qualification, but do they know how to do the job? That was one of the mindset that I had to consciously come out from, to say, right, I do have the qualification, but is there anything on my CV currently that evidences that I can actually do the job? Right? That's what you're looking for. So it was the typical UK recruiter or US recruiter. They don't really, you have it in your CV, great, but can you do the job? What have you shown that can tell us that you can do the job? So you talk about, I can prove myself in an interview, but before you get to the interview stage, your CV does the bulk of the speaking, the bulk of the talking. So if your CV is not positioned, if it's not aligned, that ATS will quickly kick out your CV, then there's still a lot more work to do. So I found that the recruiters were more skill-based than qualification-based. So I had to quickly rectify that as well in my CV and in myself. Number 3 is stop trying to prove your past, prove your future, right? I spent so much time trying to evidence to recruiters to say, okay, I can do the job. I've done this before. I've done that before. At the same time, what they wanted to see was whether I could succeed in that environment. Let me tell you a secret, right? Every technical skill can be taught. Yes. So you are a software engineer, you're a business analyst, so you're applying for those roles, and a lot of those things can be taught on the job. Obviously, you need to have some technical skills around that. But a lot of the time is the culture fit. People sometimes, especially first generation immigrant, they struggle a lot of the time to adapt to a foreign environment. And I'm not saying that you should lose yourself, right? Not at all. But you need to be able to understand that when you're being interviewed, one of the things that the interviewer is trying to find out is this person a good culture fit? So it goes beyond being able to do the job. I can do the job. I can actually do everything that's required of me. I've built this portfolio. That is great. That gets you in the room, right? But are you a good culture fit? Are you someone that is perceived that I can work with this person, right? So people might feel like, I don't want to change myself. I don't need to change myself to fit into any environment. I don't need to do that. I don't need to. Rightly so, right? I'm not saying to change yourself. I'm saying to understand the environment you're going to be in and know how to adapt correctly. Adaptation does not mean that you're changing who you are or you're losing your identity. But a lot of the time, one of the things I noticed about adaptation here, a typical example is when in typical African countries, like where I've been, when something's happening or when you don't quite agree, you disagree very strongly, very boldly, very openly, and you say, no, I don't agree, or I disagree. But it's different here. If you do that, you're going to be perceived as aggressive. You're going to be perceived as maybe not a team player, or people are going to be, we don't really know if you want to work with that person, we want to bring them on board in this and that. Adaptation. Next thing is think about your life in phases. The first job that you get when you first move into a foreign country likely would not be the job that you're going to be doing forever, except that's what you want, or except some people were lucky enough to start out in the field that they wanted. But usually your first job is not what you're going to be doing for a long time. It's a bridge. At first I was working as a carer. I did that for nearly 2 years. And those years of doing that wasn't particularly comfortable, but it was building correct work ethics and work mindsets here in the UK. So don't feel down if the first job that you got was not quite the job that's in your field or what you want. It's a starter. And I think it's that flexibility, that bit about being flexible, knowing when to switch, knowing when to adapt, knowing when to, easily flow. As I said, I was expecting that I'm going to come here and be doing heads off. Do you get what I mean? Or doing like some high roles. But I started the roles that I was seeing were either like, okay, for this role you don't have UK experience, so we can't put you there. And I knew that I had to be flexible enough to start as a trainee and have worked my way through. You're not going to be a trainee forever. So sometimes it could be that internship that you need to take. It could be that entry-level position that you needed to take. And you feel like, no, I don't want that. I understand the difference between knowing your worth and when you're trying to break into a market, especially as a first-generation immigrant. So that is very important. Don't treat every state that you are in as a destination. It's a journey. You keep going, you keep learning, you keep developing. Use the opportunity to gain the professional skills, to gain the exposure in the corporate world, in the corporate environment, and then you can take it elsewhere. You can take it literally anywhere and use it to your advantage. But if you keep looking at the fact that, I don't want to do that job, I don't want to do this. Actually, that kept me out of employment for like 4 months. When I first moved into the UK, I was looking for finance role. But despite being on a student visa, I was looking for a finance role. I said, yes, I must do those accounting or finance roles. Month 1 passed, 2, 3. And I'm thinking, what's actually going on? I started to look for a customer assistant role. Like, I got humbled to that point. I was like, okay, maybe I should do something else. And even those customer assistant roles were not coming forth. So the job market, even at that time, was really intense. And I had to take up a care role because you have to get by with something. And one of the things that people do also is that they don't want to evidence that they have been working in a different field. And I understand that bit. But if that is the only experience that you have in the country, you do need to put in your CV to say you're working in the country, but you're working is a different role. That way they get to know that you have some idea about the UK work environment. So it's not just, I can do the job. Really, it's about the work environment. Don't wait for permission to rebuild your credibility. Now, no one was going to hand me credibility. Despite you have your CV here, you have all your details, nobody's going to be able to know how credible you are to do that work until you start actually doing the work. So when you do get in, you need to be able to evidence through the quality of your work, through your interaction with people, through your work ethics, that you are someone that can be trusted. You're someone that can be trusted for a leadership position. Your reputation doesn't disappear when you move countries, but you do need to gradually start building it again. You can't just rely on what people know of you before or in the past. You're in a new environment and you need to work to make sure that your impact is felt and is visible in that new environment. Another thing is separate your identity from your job. This is very key. I remember when I was working the job that was not particularly in my field and how much it had impacted my esteem at that time. And I'm feeling like, is this the job I'm going to end up doing forever? It's not actually what I want, but is this what I'm going to be stuck with forever? And those type of things are things that if you have not taken your identity out of your job title, you will struggle a lot in different phases and stages of your life. So that's why I found it to be very important that you should separate your job title. You might be doing a job that is not in the field that you want. It does not make you less. It does not mean that you're not a professional. It does not mean that you're not qualified. Right? The job market at this time is quite something. So you keep pushing, you keep going. But I thought I'd just come in here to share these tips with you about the things that I had gone through and I wish I had known when I moved into this country. And I believe it would be helpful for you as well, especially as a first generation immigrant. Now you tell me, what experiences have you had since you moved to the country? What has it been like in terms of your job search and how are you navigating that? Let me know down in the comments. So my name is Glory, Alpha Career Strategy Session. So if you're in any stage of your career that you're looking for some guidance, you were not sure, you're at the crossroad between what to do, what not to do, you can reach out to me. I'm going to link it down below if you wanted to have a meeting with me and just talk through your career choices or path, and hit that subscribe button. Let's grow together. See you.